Down in front of it.
I'd like to bring this meeting to order to adults in and. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I entertain a motion to accept the agenda as it is. Motion in a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. I guess Tom Story, you're up.
You'll hit the mic button.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, by now, I hope that each one of you had a chance to look at my budget. Proposed budget for the year 26. Really, the only thing really went up was personnel costs, which is expected. Everything else, as I requested last year, to keep it kind of like a net zero best as possible, leveled out the budget. I've done such to the best of my ability to be able to maintain the services that Public Works provides. And I'll make the question or comment or suggestion.
I'm not sure, Tom, you would know the answer. Maybe you do. Throughout your budget, throughout all the budgets, there's a bunch of line items that say National Bank. I have no idea.
Those are our credit card expenses, so anything, so our statements from the bank does not allow us to see what that was other than the regular credit card statement. So you, as the line items say, whatever that line item is, that would be what that charge would be.
Yeah, I was wondering. I had a lot of,
I noticed on the fire department budget, they had one. As well.
For us, it's usually like Amazon or something like that.
Is there other questions for Tom?
yeah, okay.
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you for being here today. We're always getting approached by citizens, so I have some questions about things. One, are we still providing mowing service for all 3 cemeteries?
We are, however, the John Smith Foundation decided that they didn't no longer want to go forward once the contract ends with their cemetery.
And that's what I thought I had been told. And the reasoning was that monuments were being damaged. Is
Well,
that?
I'm not gonna say that there has been some damage, but that's not the reason. The reason is because, they're putting in so many of the little small 6x6, 6-inch by 6-inch, gravestones, flat gravestones for all the unmarked graves.
Uh-huh.
And there's like over 1,000 of them. And it's just just really tough for those guys to get in there. So they just asked that, they're not mowing.
The service asked or Johnny Smith?
Johnny Smith, yes.
So, I'm on the cemetery committee, and we've had where the people that are in charge of that have asked us not to do.
Okay.
It was asked of us not to cut by the group that's in charge of it. So,
They wanted to weed eat or something, so that.
no, not at all. They had somebody that wanted to do it themselves rather than have us come in there.
So then, would that not reduce the contract then?
It should reduce it some, however, I did ask for a new, estimate for this year, starting in August, where what I've done is, because the old cemetery, the burying ground gets so bad and the leaves just fall yearly, I've asked him to, once I get the estimate for taking John Smith out of there, to give me one cleanup a month of all the leaves in old burying grounds during the on season. They do it bi-weekly in the off season because it just constantly comes down and it was issued. But I've asked them if they would to estimate adding a leaf pickup once a month. their losses. Between then, that's April to September.
I think my question would be that you might want to speak with, I don't know, forestry or somebody, because part of the problem with Franklin Square Park was removing the leaf litter every year, which it didn't used to be, and that acted sort of as mulch. So since there's all those trees in there, you may want to like maybe get an arborist or somebody just to give you that kind of perspective. I understand what you're wanting to do, and I've been at the cleanup, so I know how deep it gets, but I didn't know if there would be a way to do it more beneficial. And that, Mark, that'd be for your conversation.
Now, we need to make a decision about what we're gonna do next year to figure out what our budget need will be on that line item for sure. That is something we need to do. And we've been talking with it on this, probably will come up on the first Monday or meeting maybe, of how we're gonna move forward with that.
I just know from forestry standpoint,
Yeah.
that's a concerning question with removing all.
It was like, yeah, they wanted to do, didn't want to do it every month or because it was taking too much away. So we needed to readjust and we're sort of, the cemetery committee, Tom, they've been working on
Okay,
that.
awesome.
We've got to bring something to the board to make a decision though about what we're gonna do, I guess.
Even if they left, the conversation I heard was, it started out, they're not doing a good enough job. So I told them to pick up the pace. Then it got to be they're doing too good of a job. I need to slow it down as far as they're cleaning up too much. So the leaves still need to be cleaned up. They just don't need to clean them up as far as like I had to do. That's the conversation I had, but of course, cemetery.
Maybe, you know, donating mulch, it may be that we could get actual mulch donated. That might be something that you ask. Because they're donating mulch to Franklin Square Park. I don't know why they're, you know, what their motivation is other than good citizens, but I don't know if they have an abundance of it.
Oh, when you drive down the.
Oh, God.
The bypass road, there's mountains.
So that might be something, Mark, that
Yep.
y'all might get in lieu of have it be on that impact.
And we got to figure out how we're gonna move forward.
Okay, and then also in the budget, I noticed there was a tree trimming, $3,000 under the repair and maintenance conversation. And in the past, I remember a figure of $10,000 because that's like storm and damage. You know, like if you lose a big limb, it'd be things that your building and grounds people can't do. And so I was wondering if 3,000, it's on the third page under, repair and maintenance facilities, tree trimming, 3,000. No, 30,000. Oh, 30,000. Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, brother, no, never mind, that's a whole nother, I looked at it wrong, thank you.
And that falls under the whole repair maintenance.
Yeah.
It could be
Oh, I know.
10,000, it could be 35,000.
I got
Yeah,
you.
it's always 30,000.
Okay, awesome, that's great. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is for consideration that you might want to consider is that this past year, consulting arborist Sean Schaefer, I think you probably know,
Yes.
with Never Stump, fertilized, I think at least twice, the big tree on the Garrison lawn. He donated that. So obviously you can't donate it every year. So I wonder if you might want to check in to see about adding that into your budget because, you know, that's an investment in the Garrison lawn. That tree is worth, you know, tens of thousands because you can't get one that big. And so it might be at least for the next year to try because the canopy has improved. So they're thinking they're pretty successful with that. So just something that you may want to consider.
In the past, did anybody prior to this guy volunteering doing this, did we just not fertilize it at all?
Well, a while back, about 4 years ago, I'm making it up, but probably about 4 years ago or more, we took the grass away from underneath it and did the turkey compost thing that was recommended by Connell about 5 years ago. Yeah, it's a thing. Anyway, it's a fertilization thing based on, I think, acidity and different things. I don't know, I could be making it up. So anyway, but it hasn't been being done and it was looking really bad. And Sean, with Never Stop said, went to Marshall and said, I'll donate and try this. He's got this new, I think it was a new type of fertilizer, I'm not sure. And so obviously the canopy has improved some, so that's why you may want to get with him and follow up on that, at least for another year to see if we get any more bounce from it or whatever all that means.
Is the Garrison one, Tom, part of your cutting?
No, sir.
Cuts that.
That is unfortunate.
Well, can I ask, because y'all do the community building,
No, ma'am.
y'all,
No, ma'am.
Parks and Recs goes to the
Yes,
community
yes,
building?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it doesn't say on the list, because one of the things I'll come back to this one, but, because one of the things I wanted to look at, I noticed from last year's budget to this year's budget, it says 10, building and grounds, people and 5 street people, I think. You shifted, I guess, one department to the other.
Sure. There's still in buildings grounds also covers 2 maintenance guys and 2 custodians as well.
Right. So that gives you 6 building.
Yes.
That's what I was just getting. Yeah. And so, because the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm just curious because the Parks and Recs, I went through, Parks and Recs has like 21 now, actually, because it doesn't say community building on here, 22 facilities and 9 of those are parks. And so I guess the Parks and Recs master plan has in it really 6 maintenance people in the future of Parks and Recs because it's 20 some facilities, maintenance and all that, which we have 2 that are dedicated to it. My question is, how are you, because obviously it used to be that your 6 Parks and Recs, your 6 building and grounds people did everything. So I'm wondering, is it working together, y'all being able to assist them? Because there's no way 2 people can do this whole list of things. So, and sharing equipment and all that and how that's working.
Well, they had their own equipment and, of course, they need help. Where was their help? It was really this year, they really haven't asked for help. Very, very little help. Yeah, we're always there. Yeah, if they asked if they could call Tom, that's what Tom does.
Okay.
Take the turn.
That's what Tom, there's so many things that we really created that to focus on what needed to be done and to help manage it so that it would be better. Then,
I haven't got hollered at anybody, so I'm pretty sure everything's going on.
okay.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then the other thing, that.
That was last budget cycle.
Right. The other thing is also, I know this, and this may be a discussion for you and Parks and Recs to have, but it was mentioned to me that, I don't know if everybody at the table knows, but DSI donated those planters, all the planters that are around town in the in-town area. And that's almost a $35,000 donation for all of those planters. And the Southport Garden Club does all the plantings and maintains the
You
plantings.
said that, and I looked on the budget and I saw that the beautification group, there's a line item that said buying plants for planters.
But that's planters, city planters, not those particular black planters that DSI, the Southport Garden Club provides those.
And what other planters are there?
Well, the waterfront park planter there at the corner, the planters, there's a planter, on this side, like a Ginger, where the back of Ginger's lot there on Howe, there's a planter there. It's different. There's a planter here.
Okay.
Yeah, there are things that beautification does, but these specific planters are managed by Southport Garden Club. So I just think that's a good thing for everybody to know. And then but also what was said was Parks and Recs staff is doing the watering, and since it's a streetscape thing, and this would be something you talk about with them, it would seem to me that it would fall under y'all rather than Parks and Recs. So.
You guys tell me what you want me to do.
No.
I get it done.
No,
What
no.
happened was, I remember those planners and there was it was the last budget year or the year before that, there was a part-time position put in toward these planners. When Heather and I discussed, we wanted some parks crew and you guys decided there was gonna be parks crew, first year was kicked out. Last year you guys advocated for it, you were a big advocate for it,
Oh, yeah.
which is fine with me. We kind of laid out what responsibilities was going where, in lieu of, we got rid of that part-time position because we had to buy a vehicle for that part-time position and get someone to do that part-time position. Heather's guys took on, said they could handle that, watering. However it works out, if it comes back to public works, that's fine too. We just have to get the equipment to water or spray the water, however it works out. It's fine with me.
So this morning when I looked, when I came here, it was a city truck. And it had a big tank in the back of it with water. That belongs to Parks and Rec?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And the only other question I have is, this is really, Lance, not you,
Okay.
is it said forestry projects. Is that their line item budget? That's their line item budget? It says 5,250. That's the one that they maintain that's separate from the general fund. Okay, that's all. This was
No,
curious.
no, I'm sorry, that is general fund. That's money that they would be able to request.
It follows them, for lack of a better
Follows
way
them,
to say
but
it.
it comes out of the general fund.
Yeah, I know it resides there, but it's their money that they get as donations and different things.
The donations and expense would both run through the general fund, so simply offset, yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Those are my own.
Before I ask my questions, anybody else have questions?
Got a question.
Okay.
Please take this with a grain of salt. Remember, I manage properties for a living. Looking at this budget, how do we compare to other municipalities with the number of staff that they have and the number of buildings that we take care of and that kind of thing?
Simple answer. Some of that, I don't pay attention to municipalities, to be honest. I don't.
Okay. We have in this budget $1.8 million, actually $1.9 million in staff for public works. That's just the staff. That is not the equipment. That is not, well, it is nothing else. That is almost $2 million in staff. When we're looking at our budget, that's a very, very big line item. As I'm counting through, I counted 19 staff. Is that correct?
Probably, yes.
And with that, they are not taking care of the 21 buildings that Parks and Rec are now taking care of.
Hang on a second. Yes, they're taking every city building, buildings, yes. I'm not sure where the 21. is.
Well,
That's not buildings.
No, that's all the
Not
assets. But do you get work orders from Parks and Recs to maintain? But there's like 9 parks and there's other different pieces of that. But it's actually, after finding out about the community building, it's 22, because that's not even on the list of things that are under the umbrella. Parks
When
and
you say
Rec.
building, let's back up and say that. Building is the building,
Right,
okay? The ground itself, like the community building, azalea bushes or whatever they call them, the hedges around it, that's not part of the building. We still maintain the buildings. It's maintaining Parks and Rec building. We maintain the 50 Center building. We maintain the JCB building. We maintain the gym building. So my building, bathroom facilities, the restroom facilities, maintain. Parks is parks. Parks is park. Parks is pier. Parks is a river walk. I'm not talking about buildings here. I'm not talking about the deck of the community building. I'm not talking about the community building itself. We still take care of that. So I want everybody to be confused that Parks and Rec takes care of all the buildings. Public Works buildings still takes care of the building facilities, structures.
What you're saying is that you I mean, you maintain the actual physical structures if it's grown out of the ground in Parks and Rec.
Correct, except for like the playground equipment
Okay,
and the decks, and piers and things like that, yes. Buildings, facilities, you.
How are the 19 staff distributed? Is it a,
I'll lay it out for you. Wait for it, pencil. No, we got 2 garage. Cause I'm, where's garage, that pencil, cause I'm gonna put in my 2 garage. Mechanics. 2, custodian staff. 2 buildings guys. That means for all the city buildings, 18, 19, however many city buildings. I have 2 guys that do actual facility maintenance. I have 5 guys that, do street repairs, stormwater repairs, sidewalk repairs, asphalt repairs, street sign repairs. Putting in water line in the cemetery right now today as we speak. It's just our, and we have 6 grounds guys, and that's all rights of ways, city buildings, city grounds. And then you got myself. And then Jack the officer.
Guys, this is Lo. I'd like to ask, Tom, could we get that in writing, the breakdown of the distribution and things that different employees in the department take care of?
well, that is on the budget. It tells us how many employees for each of those things on the budget. I don't think I asked my question well enough. How do the 19 staff know what they're doing every day? I mean, like, is it, we have a scheduling system? They come in and sit down and you say, okay, you're going to these 3 buildings today, you're going to these 2 buildings today. How do they know what they're doing?
The professionals, they have their daily routines. Their supervisors laid out their schedule, what they're going to do, especially the thing that's mostly on schedule is the grounds, keeping the rights of way up or whatever. The building facilities guys, it becomes from work orders, the 2 guys that maintain every city building. They typically come from work orders, repair orders, the, ICAPS report we got. The mechanics what breaks down, it was scheduled from maintenance to maintenance. The 2 custodians have their own schedule of how they do things. Jackie runs things, and I do what Jackie tells me to do.
But how are you gonna manage it right away? Because I'm just gonna use, it's bad when I do this, or when anyone does this, but I'm gonna use where I live. We have right of ways that citizens of that development pay to have cut every Monday. But if the city's taking the right of ways back and everything, then why aren't you? I'm not picking it.
I'm picking.
Then how is the city going to pay? Why are the citizens now required to continue maintaining the right of ways when they're not allowed to have anything in the right of way?
Let me back up 3 yards. Also, I have the electrical system under myself as well. Which still was the other person. So as far as you're referring to the HOAs, we have never been approached by any HOA to take over their cut. I don't want it out there that we won't do it, because that's how it kind of come across to me. It's never come, no one's ever come to the city, Public Works, or any city manager I know and say, hey, why doesn't Public Works cover my away?
Well, let's go back to the individual homeowner, whether it's HOA. And you didn't have anything to do with this decision making, so I'm just asking you how you're going to do this. So all the 8 right of ways are out there, and everybody's had to retract everything from. Is the city preparing to cut the grass on every right of way in the city of South Portland?
This is not,
It's
I
not,
think
it's
this is
two
not-
different issues.
yeah, this
Well,
is
it's
not,
a step.
the right of way question is not new. And that we didn't take anything back, it's always been ours, so I think that's misleading.
When we
No,
do,
people rightfully or wrongfully.
Y'all, they were out there, I saw 3 guys on mowers yesterday cutting the right of way, so I thank
They
y'all for
already cut
that.
right the ways.
And they've been doing that for as long as
Except for a homeowners
Yeah,
association.
yeah, those are the only ones we don't cut.
Okay.
They're the only ones we don't cut.
They cut the rest of them.
Yes.
Okay, my bad.
No, we already cut rights away. The only ones we don't cut, there are specific people who like, I want mine at 2 and 4 inches. We got, I mean, seriously, we got like 400, I would say between 350 and 400 homeowners who will get mad if we cut the right away. That's right. They don't do that. We have a like a.
As long as they're happy, then I'm happy.
There's a sign, I've seen signs in people's yards, and the right of way says, please don't cut.
And if you cut them,
There,
I had one person who called me.
Oh, I know.
They would go off to me, but, yeah.
Some natural yard.
Yes, some of
And
them
you
like,
have respected that always.
but we already do rights of way except for homeowner associations.
I'm good.
I didn't understand your question.
and
I
we do
understand the
receive a little reimbursement from DOT for the state right of ways that we do mow.
well, and one of the things to remember, and I know, Tom, you probably remember this, but, when we made a deal with DOT with the triangle, they cleaned it up and yanked out some trees that were running amok and stuff, and we agreed to mow it. I noticed it was mowed freshly today. So, that is a situation where we just said, because it's at the entrance of our town, we couldn't count on DOT to keep it looking neat and tidy. So we made that deal, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago.
that famous.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a few years.
Just a triangle.
I don't know if it's like a, agreement, so to speak.
Well, it was just a word,
Yeah,
it was
we
just a
because
handshake
they're not
agreement.
gonna come do it. They're
Yeah,
not gonna come do it, and it would be like really crazy, and we do it for the most part all the time. There was a few times last year, it took us a little while because of all the construction, but yeah, that is one area we do up there by, the triangle and right there in front of the old Walgreens building.
Mhm.
We do that, famous, pretty much does run and new Walgreens building. But yeah, one point is, I found out that DOT would reimburse us for mowing the rights of way. I'm like, why are we mowing the rights of way? They didn't want to, so we made an agreement that should institute this year. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I think it's like $1,900 back we get for cutting their rights away, but $1,900 is.
pays for the gas.
It's not exactly, few more blades or whatever.
And we were doing it anyway, right?
Yes, we can do it anyway. But we do already cut all the rights of ways, except for people who don't want it in the homeowner association. Homeowner associations do not.
So allegedly, since we're sitting on some deal with the state,
Mm.
when they finish 211 expansion, I have no idea when they get down to our end of the road, if there's actually going to be a median there or not. I don't figure that out, but that's allegedly there's supposed to be one. And it goes all the way to St. James. So St. James is working with DOT to decide what that median is going to look like. And DOT has, in a very unofficial but email, said, well, if you guys want to get involved in that, you can. But I don't know what that is. So I'll send the manager the email chain on that, because part of the conversation, if I understood St. James correctly, was that they were going to maintain it after the state planted whatever they were going to plant. And you're telling me that they have a budget to be able to pay us for that. So if we figure out how we can beautify that piece of superhighway, that might be good. And then how we're going to maintain that piece of highway medium might be good. But I just want to throw that out to you as we go through this next year, something to think about, because it'll be more than a year before we get anything there.
From the plans that I recall seeing, for the road line project, I don't think anywhere within the city or what used to be ETJ is going to have a grass median. I think like right now in front of Walmart, Builders for Source, for some reason, I'm thinking that's just a concrete divide. I don't think there's going to be like a grass median there, unless something changed and we do know the state can change.
I'll pass this stuff on and then
Sure.
you guys can work it out, okay?
Pretty sure.
Tom,
Sorry.
I apologize for asking this question with Lo Davis on the line, but, the street sweeper, we were supposed to expand our, streets that we were actually sweeping. Have we done any? I mean, I see the sweeper out every Friday and they're doing a great job, but have we extended
We
that?
hit it where, there's a need for it. We hit it where there's a need for it, yes, sir.
Good.
I'm listening.
Yeah, because
Damn it. I thought she was gonna go fix her drink.
And private citizens pay for you guys to come street sweep their driveways.
Not a question for me, but I would say no, because that's, yeah, I'm not getting into that.
from a
Yes.
liability.
I'm just looking at other revenue streams, trying to figure out how to make money.
Okay.
But, you know, part of the reasoning for getting the street sweeper was cleaner streets last year. So that's why we thought that we would be utilizing that street sweeper in like Harbor Oaks and the Landing. We have city streets at least a couple of times a year. So that, as I recall, was part of our
Right.
kind of rationale.
Does the
Right.
street sweeper only work where there's curb?
Not this one.
They work anywhere, you know, but typically just for curved areas, but it'll sweep everything. And there's been times where we've gone out and, swept up areas and also by request, it's on calls, oh, it's horrible and funny, because we've done it for him a few times. Roads, because the leaves falling, the pine straw falling, it can go anywhere. It also has to be staffed everywhere as well. Because that same person who operates the street sweeper also operates a zero turn that cuts the rights of ways.
How do they know they're doing which day?
Fridays are the street sweeper, every Friday morning. Every Friday morning.
That's just the in-town.
But is it like, truly, is there a scheduling program that we're using that can maximize our staff and make sure that we're covering all of the pieces that need to be covered in the, you know, and utilizing our people?
It's a routine, but is there something that we're lacking?
I want to make sure that we're using our people in the most efficient manner, because $2 million of staffing is very expensive.
And again, I ask the question, is there something being left out that I need to be aware of? Because to my knowledge, when we run my department, everything runs fluently and congruently with what the city needs. So if there's something that needs to be done.
It
please let me know.
absolutely does with you, but if something were to happen to you, heaven forbid, get sick,
Yeah.
something happens, is there a system in place that the next person who has to step into your position because you went on a 3-month vacation and you just were loving life? Is there a system in place, a scheduling system that somebody can step in and say, this is how we do it. This is how we move our people. This is why we're doing it this way.
Yes,
Yes and no, yes and no.
well, I think that there is some options that we need to look at, as Mark always brings up AI. And I think there is options that we need to look at and are looking at across the board for softwares to upgrade everything we do. I think certainly there are multiple departments where we need to look at bringing technology to where we are today and look at not only scheduling, but how can we use technology more efficiently. So I definitely think there is room for improvement to look at.
Back to the question. If he's not there, does the person next up know what they're supposed to do? You've got a mechanism for that already with the appraisal system. Those are the essential functions of the job. That person should, or the next in line person should know what those things are. And they should be
Pretty tough, but like, cut the right away.
right.
Give them just might be a appraisal, but doesn't tell the person
Which right away, which day?
how to do that.
Each supervisor, especially the ground supervisor, because you have to keep up with schedule or get phone calls, hey, it's growing up on the west side, it's growing up on the east side. Each supervisor has their own schedule pretty much. The ground schedule is pretty much laid out. except for recently when we're having to stop every week to break up the damn beaver dam, that we can't seem to get rid of a beaver. Whatever, but yes, there is a schedule laid out that the ground guys knows exactly what we do. When they're cutting on the street or whatever. And of course, you have any things that pop up and have to be taken care of, and, you know, we talk putting out fires, they get taken care of.
Beavers and alligators don't want to cooperate. They are not on the schedule.
Alligator's not eating.
So I'm not, we just come through a transition. We talked about it last year, or I've talked about it, and we're coming into a new way where we're not doing water and sewer anymore. We put them on streets and things of that nature, and we're figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Nobody's sitting down, nobody's taking naps on the job, right? That you know of. Everybody's generally doing something. It also is what kind of policies we're gonna create and how we're gonna move forward as to what we'll need from these people, like cutting the right of ways. If we enforce right of ways with parking permits, they would need to be cut. So we would have a more of a demand on these individuals. So really, we've got to start making some decisions versus saying, cut. We won't be saying, but cut the numbers. We want the trash picked up. We want the right of ways cut. We want the cemeteries taken care of, but cut the numbers. So I still, we're in that first year of transition where we don't have the water sewer budget. We're really on our own now type of thing. And generally your employee, you need who you've got. Is that correct?
Yes, I would full staff, talking about cut, transition, cut. I'm out like Thompson does. If you guys get to the point where you decide you want to do a RIF, or lack of better terms, which is not what I want to say, it will be up to you, 6 or 7 or 6, to decide what services do you want to cut? What services do you want to slow down? I'll say it again. Cities have residents expect a certain level of service. The Public Works Department, as ran by Tom's family, provides that service. And I will continue to provide a service either way. But at any point, either you decide you guys want to do a reduction in force of any sort, before you bring that up, sit down and talk amongst yourselves to ask yourselves, okay, guys, what services can the citizens do without? Or not necessarily without, because I'll make sure everything gets done. But what services can be slowed down a little bit? Because I don't say without, because we're gonna get it done. It just
Never
may
do
be,
without.
it just may be a little slow. That's all I'm getting at. It will get done. It just may be slow.
We're in this new paradigm. We're seeing what our grounds workers and right of way cutter take to do the job. Maybe look back at letting them do the cemeteries in some form or fashion, because it is a $40,000 cost. That before they were tied up with things, and now they're not as tied up. So if we could look at and see if it's practical. If it's not, we'll pay for the outside service. And you know, I've been talking about the robotic lawnmowers to try to relieve certain areas so you can go and do others that are more difficult, that we still need to investigate.
Wouldn't you have to do a break even on robotic lawnmower? That's gonna be a lot more expensive than a push Toro. You know, where does it break even when you're paying for the lawnmower and you got a person pushing it?
So I would sometimes break away and go to the golf course, and on the golf course out at Winding River, they've gone from having people on tractors that stop and start when you come by, to a little robotic lawnmower that cuts the fairways. And it keeps moving as I hit the ball. It even went around me one day. So, pretty interesting, and it's a $3,000 or $4,000 item that works all day and can do a certain area like a Roomba. Okay, so that it is out there. I've been shut down on the cemetery idea because of all the obstacles. But the garrison, things like that, we could relieve the pressure there. Always looks nice, always cut. Goes and hides and rebuilds when it needs energy type of thing. So crazy ideas, I know, but we're gonna have to find a new way of doing things. We're gonna have to change the way we, what we're gonna do.
I think,
If we have to.
change those out there. I think as far as robotic mowers, legal mowers, whatever you want to call them, open areas may be good. I'm not saying that Taylor Field or the Garrison Lawn or some open more work, open this way, place for work. Cemetery with 3,000 gravestones and foot stones, copings, I don't think that's a good area for it. Rights of ways where you got mailboxes, driveways, those type of things. I mean, I don't know, I'm not experiencing robotic lawnmowers, but I'm sure there's an area they could be used. I just don't know if the cemetery or right of way with all the components would be a place for them.
One of my crazy ideas, so I'll take that.
I'm pretty.
But, at least I'm gonna try something, because there has to be a change. It has to change.
I would love to change, but I can hear somebody in the park where they're saying, we got a robot out here chasing my child. Worst case scenario.
That's right. I have a feeling they'll be, they'll love them because they go straight lines. They're not chasing anybody, so. Yeah. So again, they're cutting costs on golf courses. They're maintaining them well. So, laugh if you will, but,
I'm just waiting for that field trip.
we're gonna take a field trip. I gotta make up for missing your wife's dinner. Yes, sir. Thank you for working with me, at least thinking about it. I appreciate you.
And golf courses are wide open for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm up to seeing it.
So we've got $75,000 in cemetery money that we're asking for. We've got to make a decision. Are we gonna pay someone to do the contract again? Or are we gonna bring that back into these five are for your streets and, 2 or 3 for the public?
Six rounds, raceway.
Yep, so let them maybe do that.
And again, you guys make a decision.
Yeah.
What you want to fund in the budget.
And
We'll make it work. Again, this may be slower here or there.
Yep.
But you guys are decision makers, and I always abide by your guys' decisions. I always try to do what's right by the city. I don't think there's anybody out there who's saying it differently. Excuse me, I should not.
we want to work optimally. And that's what we're looking for in whatever form or fashion.
Not provide.
Yes, sir. That's what we want.
Sure.
And
I'd like to be sure everybody knows that the Smith Cemetery is no longer being maintained by the city. The work was unsatisfactory for starters by the contractor, damaging the footstones especially, and the foundation is a nonprofit, and so we have we're seeking donations, volunteer help, and so on. So you can remove from the budget any of the monies that were previously allocated for the maintenance of the cemetery, of Smith Cemetery. Although there is a very, very, very wide right of way in front of Smith Cemetery that the city does need to maintain and does a good job of.
And I have a question coming off of what Lo just said is, I think I'm concerned that they didn't want to resurface because it was damaging headstones or whatever. Or how are you supervising them within our old burial ground in Odell?
I check them with them on the day.
Do you?
I don't sit there and watch them step by step. As far as back up to the John Smith Cemetery, there was 1 footstone that was damaged that was taken care of. I haven't received any emails or calls or written letters for unsatisfactory work. And as far as for the rest of the contract through September or August, they will still be in there doing some weeding, to not dump our weeds, because we're gonna pay, if it goes under contract, we're paying regardless. So I'd rather than be in there doing something, and paying for them.
So, but you're managing them as far as, and seeing, coming behind them to make sure they're.
Yes, I've had to reel them in a few times.
Yeah.
You know, so I've had to reel them in, there's been some bumps and bruises. But we've taken care of those, which should be expected, not optimal, but to be expected, and so many obstacles there, but I've managed everything, everything that's been done. And I think it's going well.
Alderman Kelly, you were in the proceeding process, asking questions. Are you done then?
Yes.
Anybody else have questions?
There's no money for the cemetery. It's the committee. It said we did 5,000 last year. I know we're tight, so just noticing that there is nothing. Did we use all that money last year for the signs?
Right now, yes, the signs are being made now.
And we used the entire budget for 5,000.
There was $4,400 used, the rest of it's going for the post that they want to hang up with, and then I'll cover the rest of it under 35.
Yeah, and he's covering the water lines and things of that nature under his budget that like that, at least try to stay consistent for a little while. To help them get the processes down and the signs straight. So we might look at the 5,000. We're gonna have to figure that out. We're gonna add it. Right.
Okay. So we asked the fire department, we asked the police department, we asked Parks and Rec what we're doing compared to other municipalities. I'd really love to have a picture of what we're doing compared to other municipalities with our number of staff, the amount of surface area we cover, the number of buildings we cover, and make sure that we're tracking for where we need to be and making sure we're being as efficient as possible with the folks that we have.
This is not to discredit what you said. I appreciate that perspective. Southport is not like any other 4,400 resident community in North Carolina. So if we were out and we just have different challenges that we're faced with that we can't. So, I mean, I appreciate that concept, and we've heard it all the way from, our state legislators down that, 4,400, residents and 80 plus employees. It's okay. So we have 40,000 people that show up in a single day to come to events, and what does having that number do? This is what we know it takes to get done what. And if you don't feel like the job's being done well, or could be done quicker, easier, fast, whatever, then that's what we really need to take a look at. Comparing ourselves to other municipalities is not going to do anything for us.
I think it just gives us a picture of what the expectation might be, to make sure we are not staffed incredibly lower or incredibly higher than someone else with a comparable area. And I understand that Southport is unique, but there are other coastal towns up and down North and South Carolina that share a lot of the same challenges that we do with smaller municipalities that become vacation destinations. So Southport is fantastic. As you know, I grew up here. As you know, I can't leave as many times as I try. I always end up back here. It's making sure that we are being responsible with financially, but also making sure that we're utilizing our people in the best way possible. And that's not to say they're not doing a fantastic job. In fact, they do an incredible job, but maybe they don't have enough staff to do it the way that other municipalities do it. Maybe, I don't know what we would find with that. I don't know what we would see. But we did, I'm not asking for a study, I'm asking for a couple of phone calls to other municipalities. Hey, how many people do you have? How many square miles are you? How many buildings do you guys take care of? That's all I'm asking for, is to see kind of, see what the fruit basket is, because there's no such thing as apples to apples here. It's like, see what else is out in the fruit basket.
It might also help, that inquiry, just throw this out, the people who come to us and say, you're only 4,500 people, why do you have so many staff? So I'm not sure that the ask is unreasonable at all.
I'm not saying that. I just don't want us to get caught up on, if there's a municipality that has half as many, but they don't have the parks, they don't have the structures, they don't
So
have.
if you look at the whole picture, we might be able to better
I'm ready with
explain
that.
with
Sir.
what we do.
We are the historic county seat. We have been the leader in Bowles County for the last 200 years or so. And in the last 50 years, our identity has changed. They moved the county seat to Bolivia, and everything was here. And everything that is here, we're now left with maintaining as a city rather than a county.
Mark, we're not talking against the idea.
But I'm just saying that that's what we're stuck with. It's not like, it's like comparing Europe with America in the infrastructure. Why don't we have rail and all this other stuff? Because we haven't been, Oak Island and those places haven't been cities that long. They're growing, we're shrinking. It's two different things.
And I think it's easier for us to get these numbers. Finance and myself has done a lot of that work already.
Yeah.
There are departments that we have a lot more staff than other places, and there are departments that we have less staff than other places. So I think that gives us a good barometer, but also what is the service level we want to have, and look at that analysis between what we need and where we want to
We
be.
see it in the EMF, that we used to have to have it because there wasn't a second bridge to Oak Island and people couldn't get anywhere else to here. But when things change, the need changes, and we don't know where that need really is. And it's all because change has been bigger outside than inside. And we're just living with the past, and this 50 years is a lot to me, but it's really not a lot in Southport Sides. And I'm learning that I don't see everything about Southport, even if I've been here 50 years. So we're reorganizing, and shrinking is hard to do in government.
I'm not suggesting that we shrink, and I'm not suggesting that we expand. I'm just suggesting that other than nice storylines, we actually have some hard data to say, listen, every time you come to me, see me, you tell me that I need to cut staff, but you have no explanation of where you want, what do you want us to cut? How do you want us to do it? What is it that you don't want to have happen in front of your house?
We need
So
a
we
clear
need to have a
definition of our role and play our role and not something that we're not.
Well, and I think that this board needs to think seriously, like some of the things, I don't know many municipalities that mow the right of way. Just frankly, most people, the expectation is the space between your property line and the street, you mow just like it's your yard. Doesn't mean you can go out and, pitch a tent or put up a fence, but is that something, why do we do it? Do we want to continue to do it?
Well, apparently that system is working just peachy keen, as far as I just heard.
Well, I'm not
I'm
saying that
happy.
it isn't, but it's costing the city money, and if we're trying to actually cut costs, then we have to make the decisions at that level. So what other municipalities are actually going, I mean, that's a tough decision, right? Like, that's a tough call, because now people are saying, oh, now you've taken back your land. No, we never didn't have it. It's always been ours. It's the law, it's state statute, it's, hello. So, I mean, for me, do we want to continue that service? I think we should continue that service, but that's the policy level that we should be thinking of as a board. If a department has challenges from our perspective, then we need to talk to him about it. And we need to make him aware so that he can talk to them about it. No, not you, Tom. I'm not picking on you.
No, I'm good.
Okay, I'm not picking on you, but I'm just trying, I mean, if we're really trying to cut costs and find ways, that's a service that we could stop providing. Now, our right of way might end up looking like complete shit, and nobody's gonna wanna come here at some point if it looks that way. But it's a decision we can make.
One variable we got here, and I think you just hit a little bit on it, is we've got thousands of tourists that come in here that create a lot of extra stuff. If nothing else, having to empty more trash cans and whatnot. If you got garbage printed, you know, it's an image thing. The amount of refuse that is created by 4,000 people is a whole heck of a lot different than what's created by 10,000 people or 4th of July, 40,000 people. So,
Well, all the other special events that we have. So,
yeah,
you know, this past weekend, we had
Right.
lots of people in town. The public, I use the term public works. Public works had a big portion of maintaining that process.
right.
Whether it was the hard barriers, whether it's a trash pickup, whether it's 2 hours after the event, you never knew the event was here, all of those things. So those are things that are selling points that we need to put down on a piece of paper so I can shove it in somebody's, on their desk and say, listen, this is what we're doing. Tell me what you, take your pen, here you go. Cut whatever you want. Tell me how you want to cut it.
That's a good
Be
point.
accountable for it. Just be accountable for
Yeah,
that.
so we have, your department does a lot of great stuff. What we collectively, the whole city, don't do, is figure out on a piece of paper, pieces of paper, exactly what that is, so that we can say, we have this many events. You are participating in every one of those events to some degree. We think of it as community relations is doing something, or the parks is doing something, but every one of those events, you're involved in. How do we capture all that great data, defend what we're doing, and try to put to rest anyways, the fact that as we do expand, whether we expand internally with the state, but as that 211 corridor expands and they all come to us, the pressure is going to be more so to, if nothing else, just keep the place neat.
This is the nature of the town. 4,000 people live in town down the
So
road.
40, I'm going to agree with Robert that the 4,500 number is an artificial
That's
number
correct.
that that we get told all the time about. But we're more than 4,500
Right.
people, or 40,000 people on many days. So how do we capture that?
Exactly.
And to go to Rebecca's idea is that there has to be some documents here, because traditionally in all municipalities, small municipalities have the same problem. We don't have a succession program. We just simply do not have it. It's in their heads. And it works fine as long as you're here. But we have to be able to have the succession program so that Tom Stanley can actually go take a vacation. He does not have to live in his truck during the hurricane. All of those things.
No, he has to-
Nobody said that. Nobody said that. That was one man speaking. The rest of us did not say that.
Maybe on vacation.
Back to my point, you got Old Town down the road, it's about the same size, but the only attraction there is Melvin's Hamburger. That's it. That's the only thing extra they're gonna have to clean up.
Yeah.
They're not doing any of the stuff that we do here. There's no big festival there. There's not constant attractions. You don't have constant people coming in here. They do a lot more than what the average town of a similar size does.
Alderman Kelly said it really well. This past Spring Fest was, to her point, felt like a 4th of July. It had the energy and the excitement and the people here, the activity. So, and that's only going to continue. So the 4th of July that we remember 30 years ago is now the Spring Festival. And our 4th of July festival is going to only get bigger. So that's the stuff that the other municipalities don't have. And so
They don't have a farmer's market that has hundreds of vendors and people coming and things and going, and somebody has to, the amazing part, has always been an amazing part to me, I use the 4th of July, is on the 5th of July, when I wake up and I look down House Street, it's gone.
Yeah.
So those are things that we need to capture. How do we do that?
And guys, keep in mind that next 4th of July is the 250th anniversary. I think the 40,000 people who normally come for 4th of July probably will double.
We have big plans for the 250th. That's in planning already, love.
Oh, I know, but I just think that for our budgeting, we've got to think about that.
Loud, extra loud.
Would you stop it?
Is your,
Well, she's not here.
is your department, do the trash in the parks, always does the trash in the parks?
Not in the park, not in the park. The only time any trash in the parks is on the weekends. The weekends, the regular weekend team.
So during the week, I see the guys out there every morning changing out, or not every morning, but a couple mornings a week, changing out the garbage cans. How often do they do that? Once a week, twice a week?
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays,
Okay.
unless it's obviously.
Yep.
Overflowing whatever, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays.
And they're out there before 9 o'clock.
That's the first thing.
And so where does Robin fit in? Is that she the weekend person? Is that why she's here on the weekends?
No, Robin, Monday through Friday, all the insides of the buildings, restrooms, every city building. And then weekend, we have, a guy come in, he works Wednesday through Sunday. He's a weekend guy who comes and opens and cleans the restrooms, city restrooms, empties the trash, cleans public services, things like that.
That they do Parks and Rec building?
Yes. You take care of the buildings.
Yeah, oh, okay.
That's what they do, building.
Because in that list of things, and one of the things is being backup for, the backup for, and assisting with Parks and Recs. I think that's part of also the 6 people you have for building and grounds is for those kinds of things, as they need to. That's part of your stuff as well.
Anytime the phone rings, email goes off, Karen, you know that it will be taken care of. That's what we're here for.
But that's what I'm
It doesn't
saying.
matter
If
if it's
your
corn or
list,
bread,
make
it doesn't matter
lists
if it's
of
iron, it
things.
doesn't matter if it's,
Tom, I got something on page 3. It says, and facilities.
repair and maintenance, facilities.
Yeah, so there's a number for 24, there's a number for 25, and there's nothing requested for 26.
Are you sure?
My page, I think.
At the very bottom,
It rolls to the next page, the top of the next page.
there is.
No, the next page for me is cemeteries.
Well,
I've got that.
above
I've
that,
got 150, but it's not
It's your
line item.
print. On this copy, you have it.
Oh, this is the number?
But if this is the copy you printed, we have the longer print there that it should be on.
Well,
I got it.
well, I think what he's saying is that there's no actual line item.
Right.
It doesn't, so if you look, it doesn't, that column's empty.
So you're looking at,
You see a bottom line, but you don't see what is budgeted for each of those items.
so that is the line item, but that is the line item in its entirety, facilities. So what you see is the breakdown is where the breakdown has been, where that line has been paid throughout the year. So we don't have the breakdown of what's going to be spent in 26. We just have the estimated total line item charges.
based on your case.
So you're right, Rich. I mean, there's not
So,
a,
but my question is that we budgeted in 25, $210,000. Is that right? Am I looking at that correctly?
that's what we have, yes.
And we've only spent $52,000.
Right.
So there's a bunch of money that's still sitting around, right? Am I missing that point?
See, that's,
That may
that's
be
why the
things
request is only 150 for,
Well, that money's gonna go back in that'll go into the general fund or a budget amendment to offset other department.
And it may be
But we haven't
expenses
seen
that
it.
have to be credited. to
Correct.
I'm looking at, this is the budget document that I'm given.
Right.
And so I'm looking at that we budgeted over $200,000. We've spent $52,000. There's $150,000 that is still budgeted for this thing, this portion of that. And when you add all of that up, for all the pages, how much, and I understand we're not at the end of the year, every year. How much money is there total for all the money delta between what we've spent so far And there's what, is that the last?
So, yeah, it is. So adopted 25 is 2.49 million. Year to date, we're at 1.85 million.
Well,
Okay. Last page.
yeah, well, can we, okay.
So,
So there's only a net increase of 25 to 26.
But Rich is talking specifically for this, for,
the total net expenses year to date is 1.8.
Right.
The total that was adopted is 2.4.
Right.
So more or less $600,000.
Correct.
$600,000 has not been spent year to date. I understand we're just going into May now. That's really only 2 months left.
Right.
So I don't think we're going to spend $600,000.
No, and when we come back with my proposed budget, then we will take into account the year-end projections, and then I will cut down what that delta is.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to figure
so,
out.
so the 1.6 is really an artificial deficit,
Right.
which we're fine.
Right.
Because now we've picked up 600,000 that we didn't spend last year just in this one department. Plus we've added an additional, 75,000 or 70,000, whatever it is. So that's almost $700,000 to make up that
And
deficit.
if we in fact have the sale before June 30th, land
We've got an additional,
600 and some odd $1,000. So that 1.4 or 1.1 million, depending on which day of the week it is not as dramatic as we once had. But I was trying to figure out, I'm looking at these numbers, that I understand why you think government from Ireland. I understand why you add more money than you probably are going to spend, so that when we come to you and say, could you please put a water line in for us, but we don't want to give you any money for it, you have the money to say, sure, I can. But at the end of the day, I keep looking back at that $1.4 million and trying to figure out where is that money going to come from. And there's $600,000, let's say $500,000, that's there that we won't be spending.
yeah, I think that I agree with you. That, keep in mind that that is one-time money for reoccurring expenses.
Correct. I'm just trying to get through one
Yeah,
year.
I agree with you. I agree wholeheartedly. But I think that, I hope that whatever the manager's budget looks like or whatever we're shown as a solution will include some type of long-term consideration
We're-
to the best of our
And this,
ability.
and this
Within
year
reason.
and next year is the only years that we projected deficit. So I think we will be in a good place year 3 to sustain us long term as these new developments hopefully come online.
Well, and I think that would be helpful and hopeful that that'll occur.
Right. But we
That
can't,
means that development will continue to grow, which it may or may not do, depending on interest rates and economies and everything else. Well, I just saw a house that it's on River Road, just sold for $2.4 million just the other day.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Thanks for neighbor.
yes, we have to have a cushion so that we can't put all the eggs in the development basket.
Right.
Question for the manager.
And
The wildlife people came to us hat in hand a few weeks ago, that's whenever it was, and we needed extension.
Right.
Defined extension.
So,
How do we goose them and say, we need the money, bring forward.
so I just heard from them yesterday that, they are wrapping things up. It's at the closing attorney now. So they need to be ready to do a few things on our end. So he's working with them on that. So I hope by the end of this fiscal year, we will have that money in hand to be able to count that towards 26.
Now,
we need to.
well, yeah, but I think that there's other things that we need to take into consideration because long-term capital improvement plan,
Right.
the money that we may or may not get from the state legislator for what will become the police department. I mean, Like, what is the
We
alternative?
we have a lot of needs outside the baseline deficit of the general fund. You know, we have not said, and y'all have not said what capital items you want to invest in. That will all be out of fund balance. So, yes, there's many other conversations and that money to be used to other things than just the deficit.
I have maybe a Lance question. How did we over budget the $30 vehicle registration fee so much?
It was a complete estimate last year. It was the
Okay.
first time we ever did it, and we had no idea how many vehicles were going to be registered, and we didn't have any data.
So it was a WAG that we just went with.
And an estimate was done by Dory, for last budget, and so we're just monitoring it now, just trying to figure out where we're going to end up to better budgeting purposes, but it was a guess.
Okay, 'cause, I mean, $50,000 is significant to be like, oh, we just were wrong, $50,000.
Yeah. We had, and I don't think we need to get this thing started at the very beginning of the fiscal year, because it took the county, whoever's collecting some time to get it ramped up for registrations. So we're not even at 12 full months of the history, but it's close to it. So that's it.
I thank you.
Did you say wag or swag?
WAG.
Gotta add word S to it.
There was nothing scientific about that at all.
But also addressing that 600,000 to, Rebecca's point about how much salary we are, 320 of that 600 is going to be used in salaries, and it divides out month to month. So that's the fact that we've got 2 more months there. It's not just as found as we think it might be.
Is there anything, well, I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves after each of these, is there anything that this department does that we're willing to cut? And, I mean, that's how we either, tighten up the budget, or we just roll with it. We do every year. And not that that's a bad thing, I'm just saying that sometimes we need to question what we're questioning. So we need to say,
Well, I think we've added another segment to your question. That is, if the manager is able to capture all the projects and stuff that our Parks and Public Works does, and we're able to better articulate what those things are, I think that's a big portion selling the budget overall, going forward, based on the fact that how many times do we hear you need to cut staff?
One of the things we're dealing with here, we got people that want a lot of things done, but they don't want to pay for them. And where we can get the money to pay for it, if they're screaming and yelling that they want to have it done. If you got too many people, fine. What is it you don't want done? If it doesn't get done, then someone's gonna be screaming. So it's a delicate balancing act there. I don't know what it is.
Well, I think once we get that document down, it highlights all the things that we do. That will show them that those, the naysayers, some people who just never use them.
That's all happened, yeah.
You just have to live with that.
And Tom's got ammunition.
she's sitting right here.
I've got
Some people.
Never gonna please.
So once we get that done, that will help with the PR part of the budget process. Because I'm tired of getting the 4,500.
I'm reminded of Christmas with our public employees working extra and making all the different entries in the Christmas parade. And everybody smiling and laughing and glad to be here. What is that worth? Again, I know they do extra. The fire department does extra, public works does extra. They part of the community. It's hard to value or put a number on it. So, again,
It's expected.
we like it.
Yeah.
It makes us feel good.
It makes it
It
look
makes
nice.
us feel good.
As we go forward for this year, I've heard all kinds of things. I'm glad the two of you gentlemen are here. Have we actually put underground cabling on House Street? Electricity, haven't done that yet.
Not yet, no.
So do we plan to do that in the next 6 months?
6 months?
Yeah.
No.
So what's the issue with the storyline that I just got told that, this year we'll have Christmas trees up, but they won't have the power to them? Or the white lights, we can't change the white lights out because we don't have plugs to plug them into. And if we go to batteries, it's 36 hours. We'll have to change the batteries out every 36 hours, which of course is ridiculous. But what's the true story on the power source for the various decorations?
Take this one.
And do we have to figure out some other mechanism to do
Yeah,
that?
so I have been involved in some of these conversations with Larry. What is the time frame on House Street underground? Is it 2035? 2030?
So the way we have it planned is House Street will go underground in the 26, 27. And the underground isn't going to go down House Street proper. It'll go
Put it on the
down,
back.
it'll go down the back, down Ward Street basically, and run all the pieces there. And there are some sub pieces that we have to do early, which is what's the work plan line in our capital. As an example, the car building and all this power to the several buildings that are there, Avenue Zoo and Ports of City, Java, and those guys. That has to go down the back because the actual power line underneath the footprint of that building that's going to go up. And if you notice, there are 3 or 4 transformers hanging on a beach pole in front of the place that need to get up for various reasons.
So as we do that, we'll obviously lose the old wooden overhead poles as we go down the street.
That's correct. And
And there's nothing, and the light posts that will be going up the street are less numerous than the wooden poles.
we will, by the current plan, by DOT, we have to put a light everywhere there's an existing light and possibly more.
But that's less numbers than wooden poles.
It would be less numbers of wooden poles because some of them just support power lines.
So my question to you as we try to figure out a budget and for the year that's going to continue after this Christmas, is that, is there an issue of plugging in the wreaths in the coming years?
Yes.
So
Well,
let's talk about 2 things. I think you're confusing both of them, the holly tree lights.
Yeah.
yeah, no, those are 2 different things, and one's summer.
And the Christmas wreaths.
Yeah.
The Christmas wreaths can be mounted on the light poles
Okay.
and can be powered by power from the light.
So when we put the light poles in, do we automatically, going forward, do we put a socket someplace that you can plug them in?
We'll be put in a facility to plug those items in, yes.
Okay.
It's on
And
the pole though, right? It's on the pole itself.
it'll be on the pole, but since you have a light and you have a photo cell, there are devices that you can put between the photo cell and the light that allow constant power.
Okay.
And allow the light to still operate.
Right, so that part should be taken care of going forward.
That's what would be first. Yeah, that'll be part of it.
So then now let's switch over to the white lights. And so the storylines, and I get told, I'm walking down the street here, other than they're hanging, is that we cannot, just.
Oh, I know.
Is that we can't replace them now because we have no way of being able to power them going forward.
They are powered from overhead and they are basically hot wired to the overhead power.
Always thought that was a little bit strange, but
Well, I just went around and put about like a whole container of wire that's on bare wires on the ends of those things.
So my question is, as we go
Make sure
forward,
that-
are those lights, literally this happened last weekend, what, the lights were a big topic.
Hmm.
Are we going to be able to power the white lights safely going forward?
On the holly trees,
Yes.
not with the overhead power. And if you want to put underground, we can talk about that, but that's a huge budget. I would recommend low voltage lighting of some sort if you want to do that, and you'd have to cut the concrete to put that in. So
There's solar, yeah, like I use solar twinkle lights in my
if you-
trees.
And that's what we recommend to recommended to the beautification committee, are solar lights, some sort of solar light, either an uplight or something else. I mean, there's variations and they're self-contained.
There are solar twinkle lights that will
Yeah.
go right in those trees.
There
No problem.
are versions of DC lighting that can be explored, powered by solar, very low.
And they last about 2 years and then they'll need to be replaced.
Very low, and that's what we suggest that they take a look at.
Don't we use solar on the pier?
Yeah, we have poles that have solar cells built into them and lighting, yes, sir. And that was because salt, electric conduits have problems with salt and water.
Yes, sir.
You've got the cost then of buying new lights, but that's probably minimal. If you're going to replace them every couple of years.
I mean, for $30, you get the solar twinkle light that'll go on each of those trees. That'll last for 2 years.
I don't mean to be like that guy, but we are having a conversation about Christmas lights.
Because the reason why we're having a conversation about Christmas lights is that we're talking about a budget. And I don't know is that a big budget item? Is that a little budget item? But
Well, this guy,
if we're gonna make a policy decision that we're gonna cut all those lights out, we're not gonna do it any longer. I'll be standing right behind you. Not because I'm supporting you, because you can take the arrows.
yeah, no, I just don't understand because something has always been, it always has to be.
It hasn't always been. That was-
Okay, then let's go back to the way it was.
Well, I think. As Larry says, we'll look into the solar lights. I don't think we need to go down this rabbit hole today.
Well, I think that the important piece of this is that
If the budget.
if we need to decide we're gonna cut the concrete to be able to do that, then it's a budget
Right.
issue. If we're just looking at $30 a tree, then that's maybe not a budget issue right now.
Do you know the cost off the top of your head?
I would suggest that beautification is not part of the elected budget. So,
Yeah, but
It would be-
the issue I have is that as I listen to the people from the beautification who are trying to do good work and understand everything, it depends on who I'm talking to in that group, as the understanding of what the issue was. And cutting concrete was mentioned. Maybe that's why that particular person wanted it, because there's no cost about apparently to do that from their perspective. We're just going to do it. So, and my point is that since I have the two of you here together, I'd like to make sure that the manager's working with everybody to make sure that those lights, whether individually we think they're really great or not, is a big topic. People want some kind of lights there. Vast numbers of them want those lights. So I just want to make sure if it's $30, it can be covered by donations as the lights were before.
And the biggest issue with the solar is a cloudy day, we won't have lights at night. I mean, that's the biggest issue with the solar is that it only works when there's sun.
they're pretty consistent because, I think an LED does not draw much current. So a small battery can power them for hours. And if there's capacity stored, it'll still light again. You can time them where they go off later in the evening. I mean, I haven't seen too many people walking around town at 1
After 9
a.m.
o'clock.
And after 9, really, you know, after the, mall closes. But, yeah, I mean, so like those are the advantages. If you look at the bottoms of those trees and the 2x2 little hole that's in the concrete, you'll notice that there's more roots than you could ever dig through without potentially damaging the tree. I mean, there are all kinds of issues doing this. And to do, if you wanted to do something different than solar, which is probably the least intrusive, there certainly can certainly get estimates for those things, but I can tell you that they're gonna be extraordinary.
Then you've answered my question, sir. Thank you.
When you say extraordinary, I think what I was told, maybe $100,000 to put outlets from a board.
That would not be true.
That would be much more than that.
Yes, yeah. And again, I would hate to damage those trees because then you wouldn't have anything to hang away from.
Right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I wasn't discounting that either. I've heard a lot of talk, but it just blows my mind that we're having conversations.
It's really.
Well, it's a streetscape. It's not Christmas lights. It's a streetscape.
Well, and that's, I
But
mean.
it's a modern thing that
Oh, I
doesn't
don't
always have to be,
Right.
just because it was at one
The other
time.
piece of that 4th of July that we talked about for the 4th of July festival, we always string the streamers across South Street. Well, there are gonna be light poles there that we can still string the streamers.
Maybe. Depends on how far apart they are.
It depends on how far they're.
Union.
Yes, it depends on how far.
And I would mention that that is a DOT right away, so you need height requirements. We just had a truck take some power on 13th Street. Right there.
I believe in last year, this budget, did we dedicated $10,000 to replacing those blue lights? I think it was this, in this budget, right? Or was it last year?
The beautification committee has their budget, and I believe it's $10,000. That's not in our budget.
Yeah, it was, right, it was set aside for those lights, because the regular, beautification budget is 5,000.
We'll look into it.
And again, the conversation that we had, we left with the beautification committee. I forget her name. But anyway, yes, it was to explore solar
Yes,
and
floor or otherwise.
right, or like some sort of solar.
Uplighting too is different for us. You have to pin uplighting because our lighting ordinance discourages uplighting because it's bad for the environment.
Yes, correct. We use dark sky.
So is there any other questions for Tom Stanley? Sir, you are up.
Okay, it's still morning, so good morning. Hopefully, you took a look at the electric budget iteration. And I would just point out that some of the projections here, the load forecast for our sale of electricity is preliminary that we asked electricity for based on Duke's forecast, and that really doesn't come out till later in the year, but I doubt it's gonna be much different than what we have here. Might have some variation. Also, what's factored in when I talked to Joey is the board. The North Carolina Eastern Municipality Power Agency has approved a 3.5% increase of power purchase, which we were going to pass through. So that's something.
Could you explain to us, all of us, the true ups and how we manage that? Since it's beginning, we start off with a 3% increase, but then almost every year, mid-year, they tell you there's going to be a true up. And then, but the quarter mark, there's going to be a true up, and then we finally get the true up. How do we budget that money so we're not just losing a profit margin?
How do we budget it so we don't lose our profit?
So if we expect, so we buy the power
Right,
and we sell it.
Right.
We know about how much we're going to sell. And so we can kind of guesstimate how much money we're going to have to put into the enterprise fund. Right.
Ours is set, so some municipalities use riders. So let's talk about true ups first. Why do they occur? We purchase power through electricities, which is generated by Duke Energy. Duke Energy sells us electricities collectively, our person, folks that we power through. They sell that on an estimated basis for demand and cost per kilowatt. So therefore, at the end of the year, when they look back and see what it costs to generate and their cost of operation, many times there is what's called, well, there always is what's called a true. And it can go either way. It can go in our benefit, or it can go against us and have an increase in the actual estimated versus real cost. So this year, the true up, as far as we know right now, is $30 million for the purchase.
30 for us, Southwood? Or
No,
just?
no, that's for the collective,
Okay, okay.
the collective will farm. And, we're a piece of that. So we have, what's bantered been around, what's been bantered around about 3,800 customers, something like that, which is 4,400 residents. So we are a small piece of it. So we only had a small percent. So how does that work? So electricities look at that and they divide it up over 12 or 24 months to balance that out, and that's called a true up, and that's a rider. And that we'll have a rider this year, and as the 12 months or 24 months comes by, it drops off. So electricity basically buffers that for everyone.
So they smooth it out
They
too.
smooth it out for us, and they maintain their operating costs because they're not for profit. We're not for profit. So we are basically operating above a red line or on a red line. That's really how we operate.
So in 2025, our bond comes off the books, correct?
2025 in July, our defeasance will be paid. And the defeasance rider was for a sale of generation and the decommissioning costs. So there's a retainer of about 16 million collectively that everybody will get a piece of. And also we'll drop that rider, which is fairly substantial. So we'll get some relief on our wholesale bill.
That's between 7 and 8%. About
8%.
8.5.
Call that a mic drop, Kevin?
I thought something was going on.
So our electric rates being sold, the power being sold to us
Yes,
will
sir.
drop by about 8.5%.
Yes, so when you say that, we have a cost per kilowatt hour.
Mhm.
We have cost per demand.
Mhm.
We have all the riders for transmission and equipment, which we lease those transformers we have. And then there are the true up riders, and that's about it. And then we get some credits back because electricity does own some generation, so.
Well, I guess the 8.5% is 8.5% from kilowatt hours, and not 90% overall.
No, it's everything included. So collectively, you pay 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour to electricity, but there's a demand charge per kilowatt. And all the riders collectively, so we pay about 8% every month for cost per kilowatt hour. And that's collective, that's everything.
8 cents. Okay.
So that will improve our future margins. We'll be making a little bit more money if we didn't change.
No, we wouldn't be making more money if we didn't change the rate. We need to pass, so this year, every year, Duke Energy says this is what it's gonna cost us going forward. This has nothing to do with the true cost. But that's gonna be 3.5 cents, which includes 3.5%, not 3.5 cents. 3.5% which includes the demand charges, which are going to go up, and cost per kilowatt hour. So you're talking about 0.4 cents.
But
Or
with an
10%.
8.5% reduction over here, does that come out to about 4.5%, 5% less costs for us this coming year?
It comes out, but it's going to be dispersed over a certain time period, so we're not gonna get that money back. That's what the board voted for. Not release it immediately, so to release it periodically over 24, 12 months.
So no electric windfall.
That's what the board voted on and recommended.
Not our word, to be clear.
Not our board, this is the board of utilities.
I just wanted to make sure.
So how that works is, again, it's a weighted vote. We voted to get our money right now.
We did.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
That's where we were.
Okay.
But if you look at other folks, like say Wilson or Aldermen, they don't include capital and every other cost in their rate like we do. They have riders, so they'll have cost per kilowatt hour, and then they have riders that they.
So on their bill, on the different lines.
Right, and that's what Big Energy does. They'll put, like, if you live in Boiling Spring Lakes, as an example, you'll have a cost per kilowatt hour that you use in your house. And then you'll have a rider for capital expenses. That's above and beyond that. So you may look at them and say, yeah, their cost per kilowatt hour is pretty good, but, they get a $60 rider also. So we're a small community, and we're like, Harborough. And, they have like maybe 9,000 people. We include everything in the rate, in the cost per kilowatt hour to the citizen, because it's just not effective to use riders. Now, the bigger communities, they use riders, and they also sometimes offer other utilities like gas and things like that. So they use those riders when a true up or some other thing comes on where they want to do something like that, they vary that ride. Or break their capital.
I'm a simple man. A rider sounds like it's an additional cost that is financed into the payment of whatever you're charging somebody.
So a rider is additional cost, not necessarily finance.
It's a fee.
It seems like a fee that's gonna pay some kind of a function.
It's a fee.
Yeah, and that's, right, and so if you look at our wholesale bill, it does have riders which pay for additional functions like transmission and medicines.
That are external leased items or things of that.
They're not part of the generation purchase. So, yeah, but they're part of how you get power to your house.
So in dollars and cents, percentage, something. We're gonna get an 8.5% reduction in our costs. Basically, because we no longer have, pay for the
The
bond.
seasons, yes, sir.
And for this count, I can't remember, is Electric Cities on a calendar year or is it on a calendar year, isn't it?
They are on calendar year. They're gonna operate to July, try to line up with they're not gonna.
Municipalities?
Yeah. But
Okay,
yeah, they're on
so
the calendar.
in the fiscal year, starting in July, going forward,
Right.
by the end of that year, will we have everything being even? Will we be getting more money into the enterprise fund because of this reduction?
We are going to get a reduction over 24, 12 months on our wholesale bill. So that's how it's gonna show up.
So in the
We're not gonna
past,
get cash in hand. That's what you're saying.
okay, we're not gonna get cash, we're just gonna get a reduction in.
Right, we get credits.
So over the fiscal year, we should see better cash.
But if we
Yeah,
don't
so-
change the rate, we'll get more money from from the users here than we would than the year before, because it's gone down by 8.5%. But we're still charging you the same, so we're getting that. And that rolls into my next, if that's an accurate statement, My next one is that we were told that we were gonna run out of money for the underground within like 2 years.
We will spend more than we bring in.
Well, that's true, we're currently spending about $1.8 million a year. That was
1.6.
So this year,
1.5, 1.6, 1.8, somewhere in that category, Mike.
so
And so are we gonna be able to make for the enterprise fund enough money to pay that, or going forward for the underground process? Are we gonna have to reduce how much money we spend on that because the enterprise fund will dry up if we don't?
okay, so let's look at this. Over the past couple of years, and I've been here even two, been here about one. We're working on the west side of the city. And then we have the next project, which is Moore Street, which we just recently started. The overlap on those projects has been too vigorous because it's not necessarily the money, but the constraints of getting the job done, because we were supposed to be done to the west side in September of last year, and technically it's still not done. We have some remaining pieces. So
And that contractor was let go, correct?
we no longer are using,
That's
we-
subcontract.
underground. Yes, so, and to the city, those costs are all flat rated. It doesn't cost us more if it takes them longer. They get the same regardless of how long they take, but we don't want them to take that long. So it's not the money that's constraining us, it's the time and effort and the ability to get it done with some of the difficulties that we run into putting underground in the city. So the overlap of these projects has been a little too vigorous, where you're not really completing the project in a timely fashion and getting the next one started. So we do have a different individual. We have Axel McPherson doing the underground, and they're very good at what they're doing, which is why we wanted them to do East Moore Street, because it's a very difficult area to deal with. And that project is not going to finish up until mid-26. We're not going to start another project until 26, 27 budget. And that will be the undergrounding version of Half Street. And that's estimated at 1.5 million. But because there are some retirement, lighting, and other issues that were never accounted for in the original project, because we didn't have lighting policy and things of that nature, it'll be about close to 500,000 more. So about $2 million. And we will not purchase any materials until mid-26 when we do the next budget. And the reason we wouldn't do that is because we're post-COVID. Supplies and materials are good. Costs are coming down in some cases, or at least levelized. So there's no need to really kind of hedge that and try to save money on the front.
But the line that we were told prior to your arrival is that we were going to run out of money, given the current rate of our expenditures, within about 2 years, maybe 3 years at best. Because it was like $3 million in the fund.
So we just looked last night, we're at we will be about $5 million electric fund balance at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay.
So if you look at the line item appropriated fund balance in electric, so we're
What
decreasing
What page are you on?
on number one, page one on electric, under revenue. So the appropriated fund balance is electric for the capital projects like underground. So requested in 26 is $1.3 million less than adopted in 25, exactly what he's talking about the contractors. So we are spending less money every fiscal year appropriated fund balance. So as we spend less appropriated fund balance, have a better cash flow position in revenue, and replenish that fund balance some every year, we are not in a bad situation as was originally told years ago.
So as we get further down the road, 35, 36, whatever it is that we finish the underground theoretically,
32.
32. Good. At that point, the electric fund would actually be making considerable amount of money that we will not be spending so much on underground, correct?
You would be, your capital would be reduced, yes. And you would likely want to reduce rates to the citizen because again, we're
We
not,
can't use the electric fund except for electric.
by North Carolina statute, you can take 15%. You can do it right now.
Just general stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
That's what we've been doing, like water and sewer in previous years. So in this year's budget, we transferred 400,000 from electric to general fund. So as we look in the out years, as we become profitable, then we can look at that again. Or if we go to a sale eventually, whatever.
Or if we could put the money in and perhaps someday buy another substation.
You can, yes, I mean, you can, your primary function is to keep the system in good condition, improve the system, and then reduce the cost to the citizen as much as possible.
I don't know that we're out of line with utility rates in other municipalities at this point. At one time, Southport was grossly out of line, but I think we've done a pretty good job at bringing our utilities back into.
Have they given you the latest, what's the latest that 21, 22 jurisdictional?
Collectively, we're probably number 3, if I remember right.
Lowest or highest?
That'd be on the lower end.
We were several years ago on the right-hand side of the chart, and now you're saying we're on the left-hand side.
So right now, if you look at the 3 utilities in the area, we would be lower than Duke. And we would be probably higher than the collective, the cooperative. But you have to remember that a cooperative operates differently. It's member owned and their rates are set differently. But everyone here, everyone that's involved, Duke Energy is a generator, of course, Progress. Brunswick Electric buys power from them and they have to, and they're going to be subjected to the same costs, but they distribute it differently. So I think their cost per kilowatt hour is less than ours by 1% or so. However, I think their cost for some of the other, base meters and whatnot is a little high. So we're, between the 3, we're pretty similar.
And that's how the chart that I'm talking about has about 22 jurisdictions on it.
Right, and there's some that are much higher, and we're not there, we're on the bottom side.
So we moved from the right-hand side down to this side, which is a
And
good
what you're
PR
looking-
thing for us to talk about.
Well, and what you're looking at there is you're looking at costs across, electricity, that chart you're looking at, correct, yes.
I'm trying to put the math, because what Rich is saying is about what our concerns were earlier in the year, based on what we were told. We were told then that it was, we had in the fund unencumbered 3.6 and change
Right.
million.
Yeah.
And so that was what that
Driving that
concern,
number that.
that concern, well, that we would run out
Yeah.
of money to be able to do that. So now, I want to make sure I understand. So now we're being told that that fund has $5 billion in it. Is that correct?
In last year's budget, we had, like 1.75 million for a second point of delivery that we did not spend because we couldn't get it done.
Well, so that's what's accounting for
So
the
that goes
difference.
back.
That's what's accounting for the 5 million.
No, we have, right now, all our underground projects have POs on them, and that's part of the encumbered fee funds, and the unencumbered funds, that would be part of that, and anything else that we didn't spend.
Because if we're taking 2.2 out of this 5 million, so where's the 2.2 coming from?
So that's
That's
the
land.
Well, let me try it out. Right now, today, the fund balance has about a little under $6 million, and projecting out the cash burn for the rest of this year, we're gonna burn, by my estimate, about another 865,000 of that cash. We're gonna end up with about $5 million. It gets real tricky when you start talking about encumbrances, because they've got some really big POs written out there for generic stuff like labor, right? And so if they're not going to do the underground next year at the same pace, those POs will just kind of sit there. I'm not counting that all against encumbrances. The real problem I see with what I'm doing here is this enterprise is not really throwing off much cash. It's not building the balance, right? If you take the budget that's in front of you and you strip out, you want to look just at the revenues that it generates and just at the ongoing costs to set aside capital. It's only budgeted to generate $314,000 in cash. And then they're going to spend $2 million, 2,050,000 in capital. They put back in here to support the general fund by another $400,000, which was not in the original, and $145,000 in contingency. So when you take only a $300,000 gross margin and you spend the rest of it, you're going to burn $5 million. Of that $5 million, you're going to start the year with, you're going to burn $2,286,000, which is a line item that you see in the budget, which will leave you with $2.7 million at the end of next fiscal year. So if you imagine if you repeat this scenario again in 2027, you're getting really close to running out of cash. It's happening.
That was the discussion that we had.
Yes. And so I think one point that's on your plate now is, do you really want to throw $400,000 back in general funds? Or do you want to not do that? And then, but it's just not generating, it doesn't appear to be generating much revenue at all in terms of margin. Revenue's wrong word, margin, because there's not that much margin in the bill.
Because we brought the rates down as much as we could, I think. So it's
I
not
don't
generating.
have an opinion on rates. I don't.
Yeah. Well,
Well, the rate conversation is certainly something we should have. I also think it's important to continue to get underground so that we can minimize our output. All of that starts to become profit again. And then 400,000, I don't think we should have ever put that back into this budget, to the general fund to what end? Like, we did that with sewer, and look at the mess we're in. So if we turn around and try to sell electric in 5 or 10 years, we're going to be pulling that money out, we're going to be in a deficit again. So I would try to fix the problem without that money. And if we absolutely have to, then bring that money back to the table.
so basically you're saying if we do this, we have 2.7 in the electric fund left. If we adopted this budget as it is.
Ignoring, yes, and that's ignoring any. What we need to do is blow away a bunch of POs that are out there and start over to get our contingency right, or our obligations, I should say, right. But we have some really large POs that are written for that we can spend anything against, but it's just for like labor from BEMC, but we don't have to go and burn that labor. So I'm not counting all that against the general fund right now. I mean, the fund balance right now. But the way I look at it is, we're going to start the year with about $5 million in cash. This budget would burn, 40% of that, and then leave you with 2.7 million going into the next budget cycle. Presumably, next year's function, its daily operation probably is not going to throw off more than the $300,000 or $400,000 in cash, and so it's
Still in the cycle.
It's the same topic as the general fund. Keep burning your fund balance and you're gonna run out.
So
Well, Larry, you probably may not have an answer to this, but it's fair to assume that once we're underground, our maintenance costs will diminish significantly. Is that a fair assumption?
We would lose some of the maintenance costs for overhead, right-of-way trimming, things of that nature, yes, sir. Those things will go down or be reduced. I mean, we probably always have some overhead lines in some areas. And because we do have, we do supply power to, residents outside the city. So we do have that. But yeah, those would go down to some degree. We would have, increased reliability and, less issues with like transformers that are exposed on poles and whatnot, and aging items. Squirrels. Our biggest resident, our biggest nemesis, squirrels. But yeah, I mean, and you can see over the years that this project has been going on, and it came online way before I was involved in it. The reliability of power's gotten much better in some areas of the city and not so much in other areas yet. And we're talking about some residents that may be in areas that need to be improved.
About 10 times a year.
Yeah, it's possible. And over on the east side, I mean, I thought there's some citizens over there and they have the same issue for just the very same reasons, aging overhead and squirrels.
Sometime over time, we're gonna eliminate all the maintenance items that we're dealing with now, squirrels. At some point in time, as the underground system ages, then the amount of maintenance that's gonna be required there is gonna come up. At what point in time do you anticipate that happening?
So the maintenance on the underground, the longevity of the wiring, the way we're putting it in currently in conduit, is, I can't give you an exact length of time in years.
It's a while.
It's substantial.
Okay.
Substantially different, compared to direct burial, which we do have some direct burial in our system, namely Rodwork Road and Auburn. Deep and Indigo, and those are the ones that would be more problematic, yes, sir. But when we replace them, when we have them replaced, we do put those items in conduit as it goes along, but we don't wholesale replace them.
That'll be a big expense. Just
The wholesale replacement would be a big expense, but the cost of maintenance and repair would be higher with the direct burial, because now we have to go back to an underground conduit.
That's what I'm talking about, because I've been told that Robert Roar, those lines and that stuff are not.
There's some of the older parts of the system, yes, sir, yes.
That's on customer.
I know,
So before you said 3,800 customers,
About 30.
and that's not just the city limits. We go outside the city limits on our electrical
Yeah,
service. Sort of the old ETJ area,
right.
doesn't go to Bethel Church Road. Just
Well, we go all the way up to Walmart.
all right, 3,800 subscribers,
Meters.
meters. Yes, sir. Okay.
That's how you look at it. So you have 4,400 people, but more than one person
And
lives in a house.
That's residential, commercial as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so they just did the EIA report, and that's
Yes, sir.
that we came up with was
one of
about
the,
30 commercial demand meters and other commercial and residential.
To circle back to, and Rich started the conversation with Lance. So we're basically not building fund as much as we're spending fund. Right?
Not
So
even
that's not gonna fly very long. Because, and plus we need to keep, what, $1 million, I don't know what we need to keep in it for a base. Because if we have a hurricane come through and it knocks down all our stuff, we have to be able to pay to get it repaired. Even if we get it back from FEMA in the future, we have to be able to afford to do it. And,
well, some of that can come from general fund.
yeah, but we used, I'll tell you, in a hurricane back, I think it was Florence, we used water sewer fund in order to finance the couple of $1 million that we had to spend to manage Florence. We eventually had to pay it back, but we don't have that kind of thing. So it's, huh?
Because you brought the main water line.
Well, among all the things that happened, it wasn't just that. It was the whole enchilada.
We get upgraded in our infrastructure when we have hurricanes.
Right.
That's the only way we get money. That's our moneymaker is a hurricane. We don't get upgraded until we have those problems.
So Larry, we have $500,000. Lots of grants, when we have $500,000 encumbered for manpower, labor, that's not a number of hours, is it? So as inflation goes, years go on, that the value of that $500,000 is reduced, correct? In other words, I'm assuming that, let's assume everybody makes $20 an hour. 3 years from now, they're gonna be making more than that. So your $500,000 is gonna buy less labor than it did when we put it in there.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know if we have a contract rate with them that would lock their rates for some.
So my point is encumbering that money, I'm not sure why we do that. This is not locking in anything.
We write purchase orders so that we can pay the bills against them, and they try to estimate, how much labor it's gonna take for this job or that job. And then
Just to get through the year?
No, just to get through the project, to get through phases of the project.
Okay.
So with these projects that we're talking about for underground, again, they're flat rated. They're not gonna vary. I mean, if we're quoted a certain number for labor, it's gonna stay there. The folks like Lee or McPherson, they bid the job to do it at that cost, and that's it. That's all we're gonna get. Whether it takes them, and it's up to us to manage the time and efficiency of what they're doing. Some cases, they haven't been as effective, which is why we have different individuals out there. But you're not gonna get any more money. So each year when we say, hey, this project's gonna cost this much, or the materials cost, and in some cases that can vary a little bit, but the labor is gonna stay the same.
For each leg of it? No, we bid it as a
Each
chunk.
increment,
Yeah, but we just are bidding it as an increment. The next increment, that could be higher because of
It could
inflation.
be, and yes, there are some, like I pointed out, there's some hidden costs there because some of the things that previously were thought about in the project, labor materials, the lighting changes that we talked about and various other things, retirement, all are outside of that. They really were never included in those original estimates. So that's what I said, next project, it's bid out. Currently, it's estimated at about $1.5 million. That'd be the retirement of House Street. And that'll probably be close to $500,000 more. That's what we.
So it will be 2 million.
It'll be close to $2 million. You have to do that job. And that'll be the retirement of House.
So during this next 25, 26, we're handling more street up Atlantic a little bit.
Yes, and there's,
That. And then the next project will be House Street
that's,
in 26, 27.
that's right.
So we're looking at about $3.5 million over the next two budget years.
That would be true. And this current project's already, the purchase of the material was done previously. That was $860,000. And then the labor is what's in this budget really. The material was in the previous budget.
One of the things that's interesting to me as I think about it, so we've got 3,800 residents. I'm surprised we didn't do some, I don't know if we could legally, but a special assessment for underground. When Oak Island did sewer, they assessed their property owners. I think the initial sewer assessment was around $4,000 or something. It went up from there over the years. Is there a reason why we wouldn't consider something like that? I mean, because 3,800 times, let's say $4,000 is probably over $15 million.
So what you're talking about is exactly what these guys, they charge your capital on. They're a publicly owned company, but I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't decide to try to ride a bill with costs for capital improvements.
Except the counter to that is every development since 1985 has already paid their share for that.
Yeah, and some municipalities do, when those things are improved, they have in their ordinances to subsidize that.
And then with with Oak Island and Castle Beach, when they did that, Castle Beach had 3 separate organizations that were part of their sewer treatment facility on Castle Beach. They ended up, they got a subsidy, for that. So I think there's a way around. I'm not suggesting we do, Bob, not suggesting special assessment. I'm just asking if that is an opportunity.
You do a rider, which is what Duke does. Instead of assessing, you do a rider for just capital needs.
Paul Rose, that's the other name. It's Rose.
It's gonna be a rate, it'll be seen as a rate increase regardless.
Right, so your rates remain the same, but you would have to rider for capital improvements and you get your monies from that, if that were a path that someone would want to take.
Because it doesn't make sense to me, if taking away the 800,000 that's already been spent for materials, you're looking at a 2.8 in the next couple of years. And then we're looking at dwindling down to 5 million. It's only building 300 and change a year. I don't see how those numbers all work together, that we then have anything in reserve.
Well, there are a couple of options here, obviously, like I said in the beginning, you can't spend more money than you're taking in.
Right.
So Howe Street can be, that project can be chunked up and reduced. We can do it in 2 sections. As an example, and I'm just pointing that out. We don't have to spend more money than we bring in. I mean, to me, that's what a budget's about, right? To try to stay within the margin.
Well, if we're only getting 300,000 a year building, then you're saying we would only spend 300, it would be the rest of our lives at this rate, if you're chunking it up to be able to do it.
There's an 8% increase technically in the revenue because their cost is coming down for us at 8%.
For the moment, yes.
For the moment.
So there's a little bit of,
So,
Rate increases in the future, if you'll remember Electric Cities, when we talk with them, they're gonna be looking at rate increases down the line in the next.
right, and so, you know, there are a lot of moving pieces to this whole thing. So this year, the recommendation is a 3.5% increase. With the defeasance coming up, that's 8.5%. So if you look at 2026, 27, 28, 29, and the next couple years, Duke Energy is trying to change their carbon footprint based on federal mandates. And that's going to cost substantial amounts of money. And they're going to probably try to push it off on everyone else that buys power, either through Electric Cities or even their own folks. So the anticipation, and this is again, swag or wag or whatever you want to call it, because no one really can anticipate that. They do have some actuarials looking at these things and on the electric side, and they're getting as best numbers as they can, but they've been off before. So you're looking at about a 4.5% increase over the next 4 years past this year. And if you look at the diffusions coming on at 8.5%, you look at the 3.5% this year, 4.5% each year, if you took that and did the average, we still be the negative like 1.5%.
and to be clear, that 3.5% the recommendation is, as I remember, we had a conversation before that is what is coming to us. They are raising 3.5% to us, right? Is that?
Yes, our cost of purchasing power will be increased by 3.5%.
So we are merely passing on the cost that is raised to us to the customer.
That's what we would do, yes.
Okay.
So is that?
Well, we
We
should,
would discuss that, please.
yeah, we should do better than that. You know, if we're the third cheapest out of 22, we should not only try to make up.
Well, the issue is, Larry corrected me on that. Of those 22 jurisdictions, those are Electric City jurisdictions.
Right.
Electric City does not produce a document showing how they are doing against the rest of the world.
Right, and I can tell you what we're doing. So there was a rate study that came out, not last year, the year before, and that showed where we stood with the local utilities, which would be Brunswick Electric and Duke Energy products. And so we're definitely lower than Duke Energy Progress and probably a little higher than Brunswick because of their structure,
Because of their what?
the way they structure their bills. And they're cooperative. They don't fall under the same rules and regulations that Duke or we do. The Berkman,
Their rate is 9.5 essentially.
yeah.
In most of them. I don't know if they have a rider or any of that on their bills. I've never seen one of their bills.
No, I don't believe so. But they're collective, they're cooperative, so they do not operate under the same rules.
So are you-
Membership of,
You're suggesting that we pull back over the next 2 years with regards to underground?
Well, I'm not suggesting we put, I don't know what I'm suggesting. I'm definitely not suggesting that we take 400,000 out of the funds and put it in the general fund because we're looking at, that's more than we're gonna net. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Well, even with that $400,000, now you have $700,000, and that's not enough to do these projects.
Right.
Either way, even if we put the $400,000
Right.
back, we're
Right.
still not, doesn't make
But-
it whole.
well, what are the next areas of underground after we complete Moore Street and House Street?
then we start on the east side, but I don't have it right in front of me, so I can't
Okay.
tell you exactly.
So Atlantic going north and
Yeah.
over, okay. So I would think that House Street's kind of I mean, those two areas, I think we keep dumping the money into those two areas
100%.
and then we slow down.
Well, I think those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Do we need to be in the electric business? Could we make underground part of whatever deal we sold? Whatever. I don't know what those answers are.
Where
But
does power come from? Does it come down House Street? Does it come up Moore Street? How does
How does it get here?
get? Because to me,
I
we
can
need to
take
make
you
sure
for a
the
ride.
trunk lines, for lack of a better term, I mean, the lines that are bringing them into town need to be the priority.
Well, the line that comes into town comes from over off of Leonard behind Duke Energy. It goes through the woods over to Ace Hardware, down through the woods to the sub and distribution that's over next to our city garage,
North Atlantic Avenue.
on North Atlantic Avenue.
I think we
And
have to prioritize that, because if
That's,
something happens to that.
that's Duke Energy's property.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not our.
but once it's, where does it become our property?
Our substation.
Which is at Public Works.
Yeah, right behind the, parking field here at front.
Because they do power lines, we could never get them to put that as an underground feeder.
Okay, so they're not, that was a conversation that went on with second point of delivery and all. That line that comes out of that substation is a dual line and it splits, so they will not improve it for us and give us any more capacity on it. And they can't. So the only way you can get increased capacity is to come off from up your system in a different place. Hence, say by Sunny Point on your property there, then you can come off of Brunswick, Power Station, Unit One's line. And you can get 230 kV and you can drop it there, but then you're talking about substantial investments, about 12 million.
Is that the substation?
Yeah, you'd have to put actually two, one to drop 230 to say 24, and then 24 to hour 12, so. And that would be over by us behind the city works, the city garage. And we own that property. So yeah, but so transmission negotiations for transmission lines and everything else are pretty expensive. The system that we own right now, we have only so much capacity that we can get out of those Duke lines, and those are Duke Energy lines. Go to Duke, transformers that we lease from Duke Energy, and then the rest of it is ours, and it's distributed from that point. That needs to be improved also, which is one of the lines in the budget. Talked about that. And the reason that we need to do that is we got relatively close to the limits of the transformers that we currently have right now. So to improve that reliability and increase the capacity just a little bit, I wanted to buy a new transformer and do the engineering this year, which is $1 million. It's about $800,000 for the transformer, a 15-month lead time. And then the second piece of that would be to improve the bus work and hook it into the system that would.
And you do that with a rider?
That would speak to a question that asked.
Yeah, I mean, we could create, a $4 million expense for the increase, we could come up with some kind of rider to add on to the bill.
And I think the thought was that we would be improving the system for some of the development that is going to occur down near the there. That was the presentation.
And we do have some options around as I look at grant opportunities for the entire city. There are some resiliency grants to help with undergrounds. So we, of course, can't budget for that, but I think it's worth pursuing grants that might be out there to help us with underground resiliency, and also look at grants as we go forward for the entire budget.
Look at underground grants before.
Yeah.
Reliability, improvement for reliability, enhancement there might be something that get some subsidies for.
Are there any more questions for Aldermen?
That's over there.
Twins.
All right. There's no more questions, then,
I'll say, as a wrap up, our next rec meeting is on Monday, the 5th, which is Parks and Rec. That is our regular scheduled Monday meeting, but we have no other agenda items scheduled. So we will forego our regular Monday meeting and meet here at 9 for Parks and Rec budget.
Did we have to do a public hearing?
We are still working on that, so that will be ready for Monday. We will probably have the general, we're working on completing the race. The rate committee met last week, so we're working on getting those complete for all the city rates. The committee will send that to them again, and we'll send the rest out to you all once we get those completed. And then for the electric race, we have to have a public hearing, so we have that public hearing meeting just to get forward for that as well.
Did the committee talk about any of this electric conversation we just had?
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you very much. God bless you. One time, little while.
Yeah, expect it. No matter what you do, something's not gonna be happening. Fifth here.
That's right.
Motion to adjourn, by any chance?
Yes, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
And a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.